I'm Angela Morabito with Campus Reform, and you're watching 5 Big Questions. Today, I'm joined by Isadore Johnson and Michael Hernandez, two seniors at the University of Connecticut, who say their school isn't doing enough to protect the free speech rights of students. They're pushing the university to adopt a free speech policy that they say would offer students more protection. Isadore, I'll come to you first. What motivated you to want to change your school's free speech policy? This is pretty unusual of a project for students to take on.
Yeah, so starting in 2019, when I got to campus, I learned that we had yellow light speech codes at the University of Connecticut. What that means is that there's some unconstitutional elements of the University of Connecticut's speech code. I didn't know exactly how much of a culture problem we had at the moment, but I wrote a couple articles trying to get people interested in the specific topic area. It didn't really seem like many people were interested originally, so I sort of backed down and tried to do some other stuff to try to improve campus life on the margins. But in the spring of 2021, I learned that my friend Ben Gladstone was kicked out of student government for months for explaining why he thought that all lives matter shouldn't be considered or labeled a racist statement. So regardless of whether or not all lives matter is a racist statement, an important function of free expression is the ability to speak freely without expecting to be punished for explaining your position. So I looked into what was happening behind the scenes and the role of the diversity officer in the university or in undergraduate student government, and I found it incredibly concerning how there was a significant portion of unconstitutional ways of chilling student speech. Concurrently, we've been witnessing some attempts at deplatforming, such as Joseph Henrich of Harvard University. He tried to speak on campus at a neuroscience colloquium where he was talking about why Western societies do well, and he was called a white supremacist, an imperialist, and a racist. Despite the fact that he's chair of the evolutionary biology department at Harvard. And so it seemed like there was a major culture problem as well as a policy problem, that addressing the policy would start to change. And if we teach at university administration to learn more about what is constitutionally protected speech, we can start to change the norms around it as well. And so I decided to write this bill with Mike Hernandez, and that's where everything started.
That is quite the undertaking. And Michael, I understand that you have a leadership position at the university. What has this process looked like for you?
So the process for me started about a year after Isadore, when I was running for the student government, as student body president in the fall of 2020. And I've been involved for many years in activism, fighting for civil liberties for different groups and for different issues. But I never thought I would have to fight inside a university campus, because I came in with the assumption that civil liberties were enshrined and they were protected, especially given the fact that the University of Connecticut is a public university. But we actually campaign on the idea of the UConn statement, which is modeled after the Chicago statement. And there was no controversy. Students seemed to be okay with it. And once we came in, by the winter time, when we actually proposed to the student government, we said, let's adopt this. Let's adopt it here first at the student level, get student buy-in, and then present it to the administration so that they can adopt the Chicago statement. And it immediately became a controversial issue. And that's, as Isadore pointed out, that's when we realized there was a cultural problem, and people don't understand what free speech is. And because of that, I think that the people who don't want to see something like the Chicago statement come to UConn, they found a really powerful ally in students who don't understand civil liberties or frankly don't support them. And really that's where the project really hit a major obstacle. It was mostly with the students.
So for all the controversy over this new, stronger statement, Isadore, what is in the UConn statement? What are you guys proposing that would change the pre-existing policy?
Yeah, so to understand the new UConn statement, it's important to understand what was in the original statement. So I originally tried to find UConn's policy statement, and originally they had it hidden. Originally, they didn't have this published anywhere publicly, and so I had to do some digging. I confronted the university president and asked about this. And upon reading this, I realized that there were some serious glaring deficiencies. So I want to read a couple aspects of it to really demonstrate just how lukewarm this is for protection of speech and how it fails to really provide guidance to the sort of issues that students need to be made aware of. So it says, it is essential that the debate surrounding discussion of difficult, so it emphasizes the responsibility that comes with free speech. Everyone at the campus owes to all their members of the community the responsibility to exercise his or her freedom to speak with concern and care for others and how they experience. Membership in this community does, however, mean that we must be aware of the potential social consequences of expression that relies on negative stereotypes of abuse or abusive language that has concrete material consequences or silences others. One of the most important purposes of free speech is to create an equitable change. The justifications that the school originally used to describe free speech are based solely in the idea of speech that doesn't hurt people's feelings or doesn't make people feel unequal. On a fundamental level, free speech is a human right, and it is something that is unable to be abridged by the public university because the public university is part of the government. So we came in and tried to clarify some of the issues and build upon what the free speech doctrine is with Chicago's statement so that we can be part of a broader collection of universities that are theoretically for protecting free expression. Here are specifically what we tried to change to improve this. Number one, we wanted to emphasize the importance of speech as a human right, not a human responsibility. It's important for students to be aware that not everything that people say is responsible, and it's okay for that to happen because college is a place to learn. People shouldn't fear censure or social ostracization or being kicked out of student organizations for saying things that they're still learning to figure it out. And worse, this shouldn't be done entirely on political merits either. In fact, we witnessed open racism against white students with somebody talking about how sick they were of the white folk, but suddenly this biased response, whatever, seemed to be very uninclined to respond to it, showing that this was clearly a prejudicial and ridiculous system that was only aimed at censoring people who disagreed. Second, we wanted to explain the value associated with freedom of expression and the importance of independent thought. If everyone has the same ideas, freedom of expression doesn't necessarily mean as much. It's important for students to understand that dissent and having independent judgment is a crucial aspect to a culture of free expression and of the liberal arts education in general. As a result, we thought that adding that in and making that part of the things correlated with free expression would be good for students who are curious, who are able to be molded by university policies to be better civic citizens. Third, we wanted to elaborate on the implications of punishing students for failing to agree with controversial statements. So in student government, there was a controversial bill aimed at defunding the police. And regardless of whether or not that bill was correct, there was a major emphasis on aiming bias reports at people who disagreed and calling people white supremacists. Mike will probably speak about how he was censored and shunned by an organization on an unconstitutional charge. Next, we think that describing dissent as an important value is something that is essential and not talked about in the original statement. And we wanted to challenge this notion that giving people platforms is going to lead to social chaos. That's not how free speech has worked in the past, and that's not how free speech would work if re-implemented. Finally, we wanted to further clarify how to promote this lively and fearless freedom of debate and deliberation. We think there is little guidance for students in terms of knowing how to protest. And students should be aware that they are able to protest without infringing upon other people's rights. If you want to stand outside holding a sign that says you hate Ben Shapiro, that is entirely fine. And we should be aware of that. But we should also make it clear that if somebody wants to see a controversial speaker that's standing in the way of somebody and trying to shut down what the person is speaking or using the heckler's veto, is antithetical to learning, it's antithetical to free expression, and it's simply mob rule. And so overall, our statement in strong terms argues that fearless and free debate is important, that we don't shout down speakers, and we don't try to disinvite people we don't like.
You talk about wanting to foster this lively debate, but I understand that much of the reaction to your statement has gone far beyond debate. There's been some pretty serious backlash. Michael, what have you experienced?
So in my role as student body president, I sort of became the face of this controversy. And it all started with the bias reporting system that Isadore has described. And it was used in a totally biased way, if you'll believe. So in my opposition to some of the different issues, and, you know, I vocalized my opinions in public, and I had 7 bias reports filed against me in one night because I opposed defunding the police on the grounds that, you know, we should not defund the people who are protecting us, who you know, who are all over the university and who have a very good relationship, by the way, with the student government and the student body. And we thought that was really the worst it could get, until we reached more controversies and more tough conversations that it became clear students can't have tough conversations because they've been told that they need to be in safe spaces and that they can't be challenged. So their expectations are, you know, the moment that somebody disagrees with me, it's time to shut down the debate. And that's exactly what they try to do. So after the bias reports, there were also different articles published about me. We were accused of white supremacy. We were accused of wanting to hurt students. And it all culminated in March with some really dubious stuff, some vote that was made up to basically censor me and say, like, yeah, we don't really believe in your leadership. And that actually led to the partial shutdown of the student government. And, you know, that happened all after our legislation was also put on hold. So we were never given a fair platform. So free speech was, you know, suppressed in so many ways, at the individual level, on the Senate floor, in meetings, at the leadership level. And, you know, I can't confidently say that UConn students enjoy protected speech at this point.
So you're up against remarkable opposition. Isadore, what comes next for this proposal? What are you going to be working on this school year to try to advance this project?
So our next steps are a little bit varied because we realize that having one singular approach isn't enough to challenge the leviathan that is college students, public college students' opinions. So number one, we've created a club called Huskies for Free Speech, where we personally bring a variety of speakers on campus so that students can engage with ideas that are separate than themselves. I personally have turned my column for the school newspaper into mainly interviews and provocative ideas so that students are more exposed to things that challenge their normal perspectives. Adding on to this, we are also trying to plan a free speech conference later on this year so that students who are interested in a topic are able to hear from a variety of speakers about the importance of free expression and why this sort of thing matters. We're going to continue to publicize the free speech abuses that show up on campus through organizations like Campus Reform, National Review, Reason, College Fix. And by putting the spotlight on bad behavior, we think it acts as a disinfectant, removing some of the nastier elements of it so that we can start going more above the belt relating to the issues that we want to solve. Finally, we want to have state legislatures be aware of the problems about free speech on campus so that we are better able to adopt and change our policies in a way that better protects them.
You're working so hard to draw attention to this issue, and it's going to have an impact on students long after you graduate next spring. Michael, what would this change in the free expression policy mean for the next generation of UConn students?
I think that if we're able to get these policy goals accomplished this year, it's going to leave a space for students in the future to be able to exercise their right to free expression, and and to really benefit from what higher education is supposed to offer us. And I think it's going to create a lot of pride for the university. And I think that people on the outside are watching UConn. I think donors are paying attention. And I think the state legislature is also watching this, because as the flagship institution of the state of Connecticut, UConn has a very special responsibility to lead by example. So not only does this benefit students, I think it benefits the next generation of leadership and administration. So I really hope that the student body and the administration will take our proposal seriously, because I know people on the outside certainly are.
It's certainly an exciting time, and we wish you the best as you start this new school year. Michael Hernandez and Isadore Johnson, thank you both for answering 5 big questions.